very much always identified more with like my masculine energy, especially when I was at an all-girls school. Because I was always like, okay, I guess I'll be the dude in the play, because everyone else was like a thin white waif of a woman. And I was like, I identified as the Mucinex man. I was like, all right, ladies, here we are.
Hello and welcome to Cleopatra. I'm Lynn Molly.
And I'm Christie Bahna, and this is a podcast where two Middle Eastern comedy queens go on an expedition to dig up the funny from the first generation experience.
That is a mouthful. But you got it. Today, our special guest is none other than your co-host, Christie Bahna.
I'm honored to be in the hot seat this time.
Jump right into it. Let's do the Christie Bahna story. Let's go backwards in time and let's say your parents, where did they come from? How did they come together?
Sure. My parents were born in Cairo, Egypt.
Heard of it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they met, I guess, technically at weddings.
At multiple weddings?
Yeah, like, you know.
The wedding circuit?
Yeah, the wedding circuit.
Yeah.
And they got engaged pretty shortly after in like 1973. Then my dad actually moved to America, to Westchester, New York.
Oh, wow.
He got a special visa because there was like a doctor's shortage in America, and he moved here in 1973 right after they got engaged, and my mom stayed in Egypt.
Wow.
Yeah, for 2 years.
You know, if he was a man doing that now, he'd be like, I have to be non-monogamous.
Yes, absolutely. And so began the polyamorous love story. My mom and my dad were in a polycule. Shortly after my parents got engaged, my dad moved to America in 1973, Westchester, to be a surgeon, and was working. I think he did a residency, and he worked at a hospital in Brownsville, New York, which is the birthplace of Mike Tyson.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and my dad often invoked that fact to explain what a dodgy place Brownsville was.
Oh. I'm sure people in Egypt were like, who's Mike Tyson?
Right. It's, you know, but my dad was like the head of a surgery ward in Egypt, and then he said that when he had moved to Brownsville, New York in the 70s, mind you, which was like notoriously the worst crime, et cetera, and he was like, I had never seen a wound, like a gunshot wound, in my whole life until I moved to New York. You know, like, he was very much, like, this is a whole nother level of doctoring, I guess.
Yeah, and once you come to America, you got to be ready for gun wounds, I guess.
Yeah. Just trial by fire. So, yeah, my dad lived in New York for a couple years, and he and my mom were long distance engaged. Yeah.
Did they write romantic letters? Did you find them in a desk somewhere?
I didn't find them, but my mom did say that they communicated mostly through letters. And she's also said that because long distance calling in the 70s was still, you know, insanely difficult, you would have to like go to a location and reserve and then say I'd like to make a phone call, and they'd set up the wire, and it would, you know, you'd only get to talk for a few minutes. And I cannot imagine, like, with the leap of faith that my mom took
to like trust a man going across the world.
Right. Yeah. So after their 2-year-long engagement...
What was she doing at this time? Was she living by herself or with her family?
You know, just finishing up high school.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so my mom, I guess they got engaged when she was 18.
Wow.
Yeah. And then they got married in Los Angeles when my mom was 20.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Nuts. So around 1975, my dad moved to Los Angeles. I believe he was looking for another residency, and it was between Alabama and California.
Oof, girl, you got lucky.
I got so lucky.
Yeah.
And my dad was a resident at UCLA.
Oh, wow.
And did surgery, and then changed from general surgery to ear, nose, and throat, ENT. Then he became a plastic surgeon. I mean, that's just like I famously did not avail myself of. Obviously.
How did your mom feel when she got here?
My impression is that she had a really tough time because
Yeah.
she went to a French school.
So did my mom.
I know.
Yeah.
We both had so many similarities, and a French Catholic school taught by nuns.
Yep.
It only dawned on me much later that I was like, wait, a French Catholic school smells like colonialism.
I know. When I was younger, I was like, cool, French.
Yes, exactly. We've already established the Francophile part of you is like,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of colonialism.
If I'm being colonized by the French, then perfect.
Lovers. So yeah, my mom had a hard time because she was basically learning English. Just
wow.
on the job, on the fly.
Wow.
And it was difficult. And she went to,
And she was learning LA English.
yeah, it took a while for her to learn the vocal fry dialect of Los Angeles.
Wow, yeah. It's very nuanced.
She also did say, she was like, it was very hard to learn because they swallow their words.
Yeah, as a word swallower, I can I relate to that.
I'm more of a spitter. I spit out my words. Yeah.
Then I just swallow them. That's why we're friends.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The yin and the yang of
Yeah.
so I think it was a pretty difficult, isolating time, and there also like wasn't as robust of a Egyptian Coptic community here.
I'd be shocked. Is there a robust Egyptian Coptic community now?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh,
how
very,
cool.
very much so. Yeah. I actually, boring alert, I did an ethnographic study of the Coptic community in Los Angeles for my senior thesis.
How many stand-up comedians do you think can say that?
Just
You.
one half. I can barely say it. Yeah. But I was like very into figuring out like what the Coptic community was. Like there were like 50 families in the late 50s, early 60s. And it was mostly like bachelors and people like coming, like people like my dad and his friends. And now there's just like, dozens and dozens of Coptic churches within like an 100-mile radius of. Yeah, it's pretty extensive.
Did
People don't really
any
realize.
of your dad and mom's family come out here because they came out here?
Yes. I think my dad's sister was already here, and they actually settled in Los Feliz. They were the original hipsters.
Wow.
We have more family. Most of my dad's family is in America now, but the majority of my mom's family is still in Egypt right now. So.
Okay. So what was your mom doing while your dad was working when she was in America? Was she working or was she...
She went to a college in Northridge.
Okay, yep, that's exactly the official name.
Northridge College.
It must have been so strange to be like an Egyptian surgeon's wife with a bunch of co-eds.
It was really hard for her.
I bet she just went to class and left. I bet she wasn't.
Class and church.
Yeah. Wow.
CNC. But then, she had my brother and then my sister. And then a few years later, as she said, as I found out only a few years ago, you were a surprise. And I was like, I didn't know I was a surprise. Wow.
I hope you carry that energy
what
everywhere.
A disappointing. Yeah, I popped out of a cake. What a nice way of saying I shouldn't be here. I was unplanned.
Listen, but then there would never be this podcast, and everyone's been clamoring for it.
Yeah, and everyone knows that my life has culminated in this moment.
One more podcast.
Oh boy. So
then what was little Christie like?
I was very silly as a child, and I would do impressions of my grandma and of other people, and I was really just into that observational humor.
Oh, from a young age,
So what's the deal with pita bread,
Yeah. Do you feel like childhood was a happy time?
Oh, wow. Should I be lying down on this
couch?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Was childhood a happy time? It depends on the day. It depends on whatever core wound I'm digging into at the moment. I would say overall, yes. I think eventually, I talk about this a lot in my comedy that, growing up in LA is not fun. Of
course.
Especially not in the late 90s, early 2000s with heroin chic and the all-girls Catholic school that I went to.
Yeah.
But also it's like I can only imagine that growing up now is essentially the same thing.
What was your brand as a child? Because you need to have a brand at an early
Yeah,
age.
that's true. That was the first thing I learned growing up in Los Angeles. When I was a child, I wanted to be an artist, and I also wanted to be an archaeologist.
Oh.
So I would dig up rocks from the backyard, much to the chagrin of my parents, because I dug holes in the backyard like a dog. And then I would bring all the rocks to my little shed, like my little plastic Fisher-Price Playhouse shed, and I would clean them off with toothbrushes and toothpicks and pretend that I was, and then sort them based on their degree of marbleization.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was super popular.
Super cool. Yeah, it sounds like you had a lot of friends.
Sounds like I had a lot of friends. And then I was a big music. I was never athletic at all. I just had a lot of music interests. I took piano lessons, and eventually in high school I was in the jazz band and the orchestra. And
anything notable about high school?
a joke that I have in my stand-up is that I had to come out to all my classmates as not Latina. And that was after my white teacher handed me a brochure for the Latina Heritage Scholarship Award.
I mean, honestly, take it. Why? Actually, don't take it. Absolutely don't take it. Don't take up that space.
I was thinking I could have Dolezal'd my way to the top. Before there was a Rachel Dolezal, there could have been me.
Colleges, did you know where you wanted to go?
My dream school was Berkeley.
Okay. And then
That's where I went.
Oh, look at that. You went to your dream school.
I know.
That's huge.
Mashallah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a big deal. And what a stupid. So that was a big deal.
I mean, getting into your dream college, not everyone does it. I sure didn't.
What was your dream college?
I really wanted to go to NYU, and I applied for undergrad. I did not get in. And then I applied for grad school, and I did not get in. The world did not want me to live in New York. It really wanted me to go to LA.
I kind of love that for me personally.
Yes.
Yes.
I love it for not living that close to my parents in New Jersey. So
Fair, yeah. I moved to Washington, D.C. after that and interned at a think tank, Middle Eastern Policy.
Oh, cool.
And did stuff with that. And then I went to law school, went back to Berkeley. Funny enough, at that time, I wanted to go to Georgetown Law. That was my dream school. And I was on the wait list. And then I got into Berkeley and I was like, oh, okay. And Georgetown never emailed me to say that, never actually officially rejected me. So I'm still on the waiting list towards becoming America's Next Top Model at Georgetown Law, and I cannot wait to hear back. I wonder if I should I go again?
That makes me so wild when they can't even respond. I did a copywriting test recently, and I had to submit 4 tests. It was a total of 4 hours to apply for this job, and they didn't even send me a response.
Wow.
But don't worry, I blew them up on Glassdoor. I'm really proud of myself.
Big mistake. Huge.
Yeah, she'll come after you. I'm sure whoever's reading it on Glassdoor is like, she's in love with us.
Yes. Don't worry, I left a very thorough Yelp review of Georgetown Law.
Good.
1-star admissions process.
What if you get in like tomorrow?
Well, then it's Sayonara Podcast. I'm out of here.
Oh, no.
No, just kidding. Okay. Obviously.
I once saw a review for a subway stop in New York.
What?
I was just looking for the subway stop.
Where's Subway stop?
Yeah, it was like a little dirty in the corners.
That's kind of the long and the short of it. I I just went to law school, became an attorney, and then decided to become a comedian. And here we are today.
I think we got to stop somewhere in there. I feel like something big happened right there. So let's talk about the transition from being a practicing attorney to being a comedian.
I always suspected that there was a part of me that like needed to do something creative and in comedy, and I wanted to do it basically my whole life, but never really drew the connection until...
Did you grow up watching comedy?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much like I Love Lucy, Saturday Night Live, and Late Night with Conan O'Brien were like the 3 giant, and those were like, Lucy was like when I was like really young, and then SNL when I was a little bit older, and then in high school with Conan, I was just obsessed with late night and everything, and I got a bunch of books on like improv. I bought Judy Carter's The Comedy Bible when I was 15, and I also read Truth in Comedy, And
when you were 15, so you were really, this was on the brain.
It amazes me that I didn't realize that I like wanted to be a comedian until like a few years ago.
Also, like you lived in LA, like you could have gone out to things. I didn't see it
as a viable, I mean, first of all, like we're Middle Eastern, we have to achieve. But then also, I think I felt like such an outsider in high school. I didn't feel pretty and I didn't feel popular, so I felt like my foothold needed to be academia. Like, okay, well, Christy, you can't be ugly and stupid, so you need to be really, really smart and you need to get straight A's. And so I got like, great grades in high school and in college, and that was sort of what I felt like would redeem me, is like, if I can't be popular and pretty, I need to at least be smart. And so I thought I want to preemptively reject LA and the industries before, because I actually, not even preemptively, I already felt rejected by it, because I felt rejected by the people in my high school, which were very embedded in the LA industry, because it's
of course,
yes, very connected people, lots of daughters of famous people. I just didn't feel like it was something I could access.
I very much relate to that, and I think I felt so much of that, and it really wasn't until I started to see them pushing diversity that I was like, oh, there's a space for someone like me. Because you're right, when we were younger, there just wasn't space in entertainment for people like us.
Right. And there were very few like Middle Eastern people doing it anyway, and I really did see it as like a white male thing.
And
anyway,
I thought if you were a woman, you either had to be like hot, like blonde kind of thing, or you had to be like super like masculine and like carry like a very strong, hard energy that I just don't.
That's funny. So I very much always identified more with like my masculine energy, especially when I was at an all-girls school. Because I was always like, okay, I guess I'll be the dude in the play, because everyone else was like a thin white waif of a woman. And I was like, I identified as the Mucinex man. I was like, all right, ladies, here we are, and that was me just being like, I'll be. So I thought I was very masculine and androgynous until like 2010.
Oh, wow.
And then finally like had like a come to Jesus moment where I was like, oh, I guess I'm feminine and people don't see me as manly.
Yeah, I see you as very feminine.
It's a story that I love to tell because it's so absurd. I was walking down the street in Oakland, and there was like an old man, like a block down, walking towards me, and he went, young man, and I looked and there was no one else. And as we got closer, I was like, oh, are you talking to me? And he went, no, are you a young man? And he was so incredulous that I was like, maybe I'm not. And I have no idea who he was talking to, but I do answer to sir.
So that's the day you learned you weren't a young man.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was the fact that he was like, you're so stupid for even thinking that I could be talking to you.
So what was your parents' reaction when you switched?
I kind of broke it to them gently, where I was like, just so you know, in the future, I'm going to have to quit my big law firm job and maybe do a less intense law job and try to be a comedian. And then I kind of started.
And then you were like, honk, honk. And
yes.
Drove off in your.
I perfected that.
Oh, wow.
Noise. Yeah, thank you.
Wait, do that one more time.
Wait.
It's too good.
I did sit down with my parents and tell them, I know that if I'm on my deathbed when I'm 80, I'm going to regret never trying.
And so your parents were just like, okay?
I mean, I think I made their potential pushback so much bigger in my head. And I was like, I can't, I'm going to disappoint them so much and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes I would like mention it to my mom, and my mom would be like, yes, that will be a great thing to do when you retire.
Or like, that's a nice little hobby on the side.
Exactly. A side, gig. And eventually I was always going to just still be a full-time lawyer and do it on the side. And then when the pandemic happened, I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, everyone's dropping like flies left and right. And I'm already regretting not starting sooner. And then that's when I like really dove into it and then quit my big law firm job and moved to LA for the free rent, not because I thought I was ready for the most competitive, intense scene of comedy. Thank you.
For anyone who's never seen Christie perform, she is killing it in the scene right now, and she's moving faster than anyone. Well, maybe not anyone. There's some people who move lightning fast.
You know I'm going to edit this out.
Okay. It's time to get to our wild questions that I have on my phone because my printer wasn't working. The first one is, Cleopatra viewed herself as a living goddess. Tell us about a time you felt almost supernatural or godlike, or tell us about a weird, random, or useless talent.
So we already just discussed one of my useless talents, which is...
Was that the one you had prepared for this?
No. The useless talent that I have that I wish... that I'm not the only person that has this talent. Actually, Rachel Dratch did a like game on Jimmy Fallon with it once. But basically, I can identify what song is playing based on like the first few milliseconds of a song. And we can't, there's no way to
I was going to say, should we test this out? I don't know how to do it. I can't.
You don't have the capacity. But like if I hear like half of a measure of a song, I will know what
immediately
it is.
know. Yeah. How often does this skill come in useful to you?
I use it about as often as you use your sandwich.
My sandwich skill one time.
Yeah. I'm a pretty good whistler.
Okay. I can't whistle, so that's huge.
You can't whistle?
Nope.
Prove it.
Oh, it's so embarrassing. Okay, so we have another question, which is, Cleopatra wasn't actually Egyptian, but she embraced many Egyptian customs. What is a super American custom you've adopted or part of your culture that you've tried to shake but can't?
Okay. So I would say the super American custom I adopted was basing my entire worth on productivity.
That is a very...
so American of me. Yeah. I think... in general, I mean, I haven't been to Egypt for several years, but I recall needing to take my watch off so that I didn't have an acute sense of every passing minute.
Wow.
Because the pace of life is just so different. And there isn't this, like, everyone needs to hustle at all moments, and it's productivity, and it's burnout, and it's hustle. And, like, that is so how I was raised and how kind of everyone needs to be in America.
Yeah.
And there just wasn't that same sensibility. There's like a different natural rhythm of life that was, and it's natural, but because it's natural to humanity, it's unnatural to me, to Americans, to people who are like, well, we said we'd be here at 1 and it's 5, you know?
I bet in that culture you probably sleep so much better.
Yeah, totally. I think the most like regulated my nervous system ever was when I was in Egypt, probably.
Yeah,
because I was just like so in the moment of like, it doesn't matter what we're doing later. It doesn't, like, you show up when you show up, you know, and like nobody holds it against you. And I was holding it against everyone for a while. And then I was like, you just need to let go of this, Christy. Yeah. Like, we said we'd get to the beach at 1, and then the rest of my family shows up at like 3 or 4 p.m. And I'm like, you know, and it's like, this is how it is. You need to adapt. You need to loosen your bone in your hair. Does that make sense? Loosen your bone?
Yeah. Loosen your bone. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, the full quote is loosen your bone, Wilma. So like the bone in your hair. But
oh, I see.
That's from Jen Sincero, but I just realized that loosen your bone is not obviously what it is. So yeah, adopting a less intense pace of life. So that would probably be one thing I would like to shed.
I think you would need everyone around you to shed it. I think the problem is here we all fuel this culture. We bring it upon ourselves. So if it would have to be such a societal shift, and I just don't know if I see that happening for American kind.
I think also an Egyptian custom that I like haven't been able to shake. Probably, I guess, a little bit of superstition about the evil eye.
Oh.
Yeah. Like my mom would claims that she doesn't believe in it, but then every now and then she'll be like, I think somebody gave us the eye.
How many of those eyes do you have in your house at home?
Not actually that many.
Yeah.
We have more crucifixes than we do eyes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I'm wondering if maybe I should do like a hybrid with like a crucifix and then in the middle an eye.
Ooh, I bet they sell that.
Or do the powers cancel each other out because one's superstition and one's Christianity? I mean, Eastern Christianity is actually very mystic. There's like a lot of mysticism. And it's a lot more woo-woo than Western Christianity for sure.
Well, isn't religion and superstition kind of the same?
The official party line is no.
Okay. I keep hiding my phone, like they don't know that I have one.
Yeah, don't let them know.
Okay, Cleopatra was the queen of luxury. What's the one bougie thing you never skimp on?
I am a huge fan of the fancy olive oil, butter, and salt.
Ooh,
I'm
okay.
like all about. We established last episode that I will drink the $5 bottle of wine or whatever, but do not separate me from my Maldon flaky sea salt.
Okay, is that like the thick sea salt?
Yeah.
Yeah, that they've like put on cookies?
Finishing salt,
Ooh.
yeah.
Oh, a finishing salt.
Yes.
I see.
So I love.
And what's
that
the
type of-
olive oil?
Just any really good
Okay.
quality. You know, the very high quality ones are just for drizzling, also like finishing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
you love a
mean, you don't want to
finisher.
cook with them. Yeah, and good butter. I love that Kerrygold Irish butter.
People love Kerrygold. I got to get in on this.
And or just any other type of like European cultured butter.
Okay. Everyone always tells me my butter is trash because I just get the like regular cheap one from Trader Joe's. I feel like Kerrygold should now sponsor this podcast.
Kerrygold doesn't need sponsorship. They're too excellent and famous. Word of mouth butter.
We'll find like a new startup cultured butter to sponsor this.
Okay.
Okay, Cleopatra and Mark Antony had their own drinking club called Inimitable Livers, where they'd go on wine binges and have feasts. Tell us about a club you started or belonged to. Alternatively, tell us about your own drinking story.
So, as an attorney and then also as a comedian, I've drank many drinks.
That feels right.
It was just like the thing that was so surprising when you're at a law firm is like people will just have their bottles of whiskey and scotch like displayed with glasses. It was not frowned upon to be drinking like after a certain point.
Like Mad Men.
Yeah, it was basically. And people would be like, oh, let's just like have a quick. So I would definitely like, oh, it's 6:00. We're all going to like go in so-and-so's office and have a splash of scotch. And that was very strange. But the drinking story that I wanted to share was that one of my good friends from law school, Amanda, had her wedding on a vineyard. And there was, the wine was flowing. And apparently, I don't recall this, but at some point, one of our friends took a glass of wine out of my hand and replaced it with a wine glass of water because they wanted me to hydrate.
No.
And I said, you just reversed Jesus me. And I'm like, wow, blackout me was pretty clever.
And now it's time for Dig Deep, our lightning question round. Okay, Elizabeth Taylor famously portrayed Cleopatra. If your life were a crossover episode of 2 TV shows or films, what would they be and who would play you?
So I feel like if right now my life is a crossover episode between Suits and Crashing, the not the Phoebe Waller-Bridge one, the Pete Holmes one, because Suits is about lawyers and it's a hilariously unrealistic depiction of what it's like to work at a big high-powered law firm, and Crashing is about a up-and-coming stand-up comedian who is just stumbling his way through the scene, and that's kind of how I feel. I guess, like, looks-wise, I get compared the most to Alana Glazer, so I guess she would have to play me.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
But energetically, if I could be played by anyone, it would be Stanley Tucci.
Oh, oh, it's like a crossover actor. Why don't we have both of them play?
I mean, Stanley Tucci is one of my favorite actors. His whole vibe is just...
it's immaculate.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we have one final question, I know.
Get into it. Cleopatra left a storied legacy as a queen, scientist, and scholar. What do you want your legacy to be? What would you like to be remembered for the most? Alternatively, what would your epitaph read?
Okay, so I have a joke answer and a serious answer.
Okay.
The joke answer, when I was in high school, I loved Monty Python, of course.
Okay.
And I jokingly thought it would be funny to have a headstone that read, "'Tis but a scratch." Because, it obviously is a reference to Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but it's also a hilarious exaggeration. It's also a literal scratch chiseled on a headstone. But it's also kind of a metaphor for what I think life is,
Sounds like a tattoo.
I know. I don't have any tattoos.
Me
so
neither.
This wouldn't be... and that is more than a scratch. But I feel like the older I get, the more I am stepping into the notion that Jim Carrey has said that the most powerful currency you have is your effect on other people.
Oof.
Yeah. And so I guess just I want to be remembered for making people laugh and feel better about themselves, people feeling understood and not judged, and just being like a little bit of a light and ointment on the wound that is this festering capitalist existence a little bit. And yeah, that's what I would want to be remembered for.
Cool.
I think about it a lot because obviously my dad passed away last year. And I think when I'm in a good place, I'm able to kind of put in perspective whatever it is that I'm going through, which is usually a very unnecessary narrative about my anxiety or my inadequacy. And so I think it does offer a lot of perspective about how little most of this matters.
I guess that's a good way to use a fear of death as a way of rationalizing how little all this stuff matters. That kind of feels like a positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also like a very, stoic concept, memento mori, the remembrance of death. It kind of just keeps you, and the pendulum swings the other way for me, where I'm like, all right, I want to die. Like, I'm not like, oh, this won't matter when I die. I'm like, let's speed it up a little. Let's get there. I'm so over this. But yeah.
Just because I've never actually had this conversation with you, what do you think the afterlife is?
Oh boy. I mean, I do believe, that energy is neither created nor destroyed. So I do believe that there is like an essence that we all have as souls, pure consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't dissipate in the universe.
It's like in The Good Place.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also the movie Soul, the Pixar movie Soul.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, such a good movie.
It was so beautiful.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think happens when we die? I'm sorry, we're out of time.
I think I'm of the philosophy it's whatever it was before we were born. Like, do you remember what it was like before you were born? No, I think it's the same thing. But I do think you leave an energy behind. But I think for me, I see it as like the big sleep. And as an insomniac, it actually sounds really like finally
really great.
Some shut eye.
Yeah. And this melatonin we call life as we just slowly drift off.
I feel like we're spinning this podcast as like a pro-death podcast, and I want to make it very
clear.
Here
at Podtra, we're very pro-death.
You're not pro-death.
Well, we are pro-death in the sense that we believe that death will happen,
Yeah. And I mean, that it's not all, there can be like celebration in it.
Yeah. Do you know something wild I found out last week? I was talking to my mom about some sort of loose ends we have to tie with my dad's passing, and she casually mentioned that she bought burial plots for me and my siblings. And I was like, what?
Is your dad buried in a burial plot?
Yeah.
And it's the same one?
It's the same cemetery.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of nice that's like taken care of.
Right. But she was like, yeah, you'll go ahead and, when that happens, and she was talking about how like the price of burial plots is skyrocketing.
I mean.
And I'm just like, oh God, just throw me into the ocean. I want to die at sea.
That's how I feel. I just want to be like put in a dumpster, like in my like garage, in my like apartment garage dumpster.
I mean, why not just be cremated?
Yeah, that too. I just want to make it like as easy as possible for everyone around me.
I was telling you about how I was on the phone with the cemetery people about the headstone, and they were really upselling me on...
I mean, you got to make your money somehow.
I mean, it's insane to me that there's just nothing safe from the claws of capitalism that we're like, make sure you let them know. Like, I wanted to just order the headstone online, and they're like, no, you got to come in. You got to pick the this and pick the that because it's going to represent your father.
It is so wild that when someone dies, it's like you're grieving, but you also have to deal with all these.
Right.
There's so much legal and the organization, and it's.
And I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing logistics and emotions. I think that's probably one of the good things I learned as a lawyer. And so I'm not kidding. Like, when I was coffin shopping, no, that's stupid.
Women be shopping.
Coffin. Women be shopping for coffins. I was like, I found out that Costco sells coffins.
Yeah, I've heard.
And we were joking that we were going to just buy our whole family's coffins in bulk. Little did I know, a year later I'd find out that my mama bought our burial plots in bulk.
Listen, that's like buying like property in LA in like the 1980s. Like, it's just such a good investment.
I'm serious. I wanted to be like, Mom, can I live there now? Rent is very expensive. Like those people who live in storage units, but I'll take it a step further and just live in a little, like a tiny house, but it'll be on the burial ground.
Exactly.
So dark.
Or you could like Airbnb it out, make some money.
Yeah, Airbnb, whatever the opposite of air, it's Earth B&B. So stupid. Oh my God. But yeah, there was a moment I was like, do we ask if Costco price matches? Is that like, do I need to do this? I had to decide how Arab I was going to be. There is a lot of funny, bizarre stuff about death, and it is surreal. And I think that is kind of a good thing to keep in mind always, because it's really hard to get mad about something that you know is not going to matter in the long term. But I also struggle with, I don't want to say that nothing matters, because then it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
you have to kind of toe the line between making meaning while you're alive, but not just resigning because you know you're going to die. That's called clinical depression.
Wow, this got really deep.
I like that you were like, so we're going to wrap this up. And I'm like, let's talk about the afterlife.
This has been Cleopatra with Lynn Molly and
Christie Bahna. Please like and subscribe and continue to support us. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
See you soon. Bye.